name and your job title. And yeah, when you're talking, just want to look right into the camera.
Okay. My name is Roland Smallcannon. I'm the grazing committee from Shanto, Arizona.
Perfect. And so you described your job. What responsibilities does your job entail, and what inspired you to choose your career path?
The reason why I became a grazing official was grazing committee. The grazing official, he passed on. He had a accident, so he passed on, and there was an opening there. And I put in my bid for election, and fortunately I won the election, and that's how I became a grazing official. And what inspired me was, since I retired from my job from Navajo Generating Station. I was a planner scheduler there, and here it was more like educating myself to become a grazing official, to really understand the laws for taking care of the land and the grazing livestock. So that's the main reason why I became a grazing official, and what the local people need and what I need to do to increase the vegetation on the reservation, and then with the tribe too, and then also the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Awesome, okay. And so, could you talk a little bit about why it is important to manage the wild burrow and horse population out here?
Mainly it's to maintain the vegetation and always have plant growing. Out here as it is with the global warming, and you got the vegetation disappearing and the wildlife, and the way the grazing, the Navajo Nation set up is you have grazing permittees. That's what we call people that have grazing permits. So the way it is now, the grazing land is disappearing, and you have grazing land. Say you have a permittee that lives 1/8 of a mile, or even 1/4 of a mile, or even half a mile, and you have the grazing land there that they call it customary use land. And these customary use land, they overlap. Say you draw a radius and they overlap, and where the most damage they're doing is where they overlap, and they don't leave like 50% of the vegetation. They take it all the way down to the grass head, and you know what happens when that's completely gone. It kills the root, and there's nothing to grow back. So wildlife, supposedly you're supposed to leave like 30% of it, 40% of it, but now even that the wildlife, they're disappearing too, and the reason why is you got feral horses, and you got donkeys, and you got people grazing their livestock. So there's a lot of damage always happening, but there's some people that think about these things to be more responsible vegetation, so they try to move their animals around here and there, but it's pretty hard if you don't have a range management unit. Out here is this open range, so there's no control on grazing.
Okay, great. So, how does the wild burrow and horse population affect the livestock in the area? When like people who are raising cattle around, does it affect them at all?
In a way it does, yeah. It affects them. Excuse me. The cattle, for instance, cattle. They used to graze around their land there where the customary use is, but you have the donkeys and the feral horses. They eat on the vegetation. So now the cattle, they go out more. They're more spread out, and they encroach into other customary use areas. So these cattle, they travel maybe like 5 miles, and maybe cattle, they travel like maybe 10 miles just to get good vegetation. And same way with water. They have to travel quite a distance to get good water. And out here, sometimes, say like you have a windmill down and you can't get good fresh water, and then you got streams out here, but they're, with the warm temperature and the hot temperatures, they soak into the sand dunes back there, and you don't have the streams anymore.
Okay. So would you say it also affects the natural wildlife around here too?
Yes, it does. It like I said, the wildlife, they're migrating back towards like the higher country, and you don't see any rabbits anymore, or even say like the prairie dogs. They're around, but they don't usually, you don't see them anymore. And the deer, they used to migrate through here, and they don't do that anymore, like antelopes, and you got elk, but they just migrate through here, and they're gone.
Wow, that's actually really, really interesting.
Uh-huh.
So in your opinion, how do the locals feel about the wild hood and horse burrows around here?
They want to get rid of them. Before, what they used to think was people wanted them, like, because we have traditional songs, and you got prayers, and it's tied in with our traditional ways. But now they see the damage that's happening, like vegetation, they're disappearing, and they're I think they're finally seeing it, because the way we calculate the horses versus a sheep, they say they call it one sheep unit equals for one horse, it equals 5 sheep units, and then for a cow it's 4 sheep units. So that's I think that's calculated on how much they graze versus one sheep. And nowadays, we had a seminar on it in Tuba City that says one sheep now, with the current condition, it can sustain, one sheep equals 60 acres per year. But with the dry condition, it might be like 100 now. So it's devastating.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'll wait for this wind to die down just a second. So what steps are you taking to better manage the population?
Like right now, I'm currently working on doing horse entrapment. I scheduled it 2 weeks, 10 days from now. It's going to fall on a Monday. About 15 miles north of here, at this one windmill, since all the water holes are dry, they drink water from that windmill. So we counted like 120 heads of horses. So I'm working with the tribe and BIA to do a horse entrapment. So if we can capture those, and then the tribe will come in, pick them up, process them through the tribe, and they put them up for adoption. So there's on the backside, I really don't know what happens to the exchange, how that happens with the tribe and people that buy or people that adopt horses.
Okay.
So,
okay, just kind of another question to go with those is, in your opinion, how would people feel about us coming in today, rounding a few burrows up? Would they be fine with that, or are they? Well, what's your opinion on that?
I think they'll appreciate it, and knowing where they're going to go, I think they'll be more appreciative of it. They'll understand, and I think before there was say I don't know who they spread the rumor saying these horses that get captured, they get slaughtered, but that's not the case. Now I think people are more educated. That was part of my job, to tell the people, since I visit people for tally counts, and I visit them, and I have there's like training involved there. I usually communicate with the people out there, telling them I said these horses that are removed from the reservation, they get adopted, and they get trained, and they're well taken care of. I think that's how they accepted that. Now they're feeling different about it.
Okay. And just one last question, and this is mostly just for us to know, and not so much for the camera. But could you just go over again, to the best of your knowledge, like how we can do this so we're not gonna get in trouble? Just because all these people are gonna see, we just want to double check.
Well, like the process I'm going through, I have to call Navajo Nation for this horse entrapment. So I have to get people. I have to notify NNDA, that's Navajo Nation Department of Agriculture. So I have to notify them. Then there's the enforcement side, that's Navajo Ranger. And then BIA, they're just there for support, like to support us with panels and trailers. And then NNDA is sort of the same way. They have bigger trailers, so trucks and trailers. So when I get these horses in, they'll be there. In the enforcement part, they'll be there for inspection, because every one of these horses are inspected, and they get processed, and then that way they record. This mainly for recording purposes.
Okay. So if we were to catch some tomorrow, would like Casey be able to bring them up to us later, or would we be able to just leave with them? Or?
Well, what I would have to do is
Get a hauling permit?
Get a hauling permit, yeah.
How long does that usually take?
I issue those.
Oh, okay.
But the part that's not clear is like.
Do you get a Coggins?
Coggins, yeah. Coggins and.
Okay. Like that. So that's the only part that's gonna hang us up. All right. Okay.
Yeah, if we catch them tomorrow, I'll just let them hang out here. Then I'll get that. I'll inspect that.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get a ranger involved on this. That way you get, make sure there's nothing that holds you up.
Perfect.
Next week I'll be coming back here. I'll fall break next week.
Okay.
We'll just have you say your name again and your job title, just in case the first one was a little windy.
Okay. All right. My name's Roland Small Canyon. I'm the grazing official from Shanto chapter.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, thank you so much.